and welcome to Americans Learn. Almost such a canime because I've just filmed like 5 videos for that channel. But no, this is Americans Learn. Today I'm watching another Vividen video. Because that's fun to say. Vividen video, Vividen video, Vividen video, Vividen video, Vividen video. Nope, didn't get 5, got 4. Anyway, say it 5 times fast. And this is dinosaurs are even bigger than we thought. Because the last video I did by Vividen apparently has some updates. There's new stuff that we found. Science is always making wonderful improvements in things. And I cannot wait to learn just a little bit more about how big these guys actually were. Haha! If there's a lot of scientific jargon, I am not going to understand most of it. But I will hopefully at least get a general idea of what we now know that we didn't before. So, strap in!
A cutting-edge study shows that our traditional understanding of dinosaur size may be underselling the ancient reptiles. It's no secret that one of the biggest draws to dinosaurs, and paleontology in general, in terms of the public view, is how big prehistoric animals were capable of getting. Obviously, ecology, anatomy, and evolutionary relationships form the bulk of actual paleontology work, but body size is actually a crucial element to understanding all of those.
Okay.
So what's the use of estimating body size?
Okay.
You all know that it's a topic I'm highly interested in, along with many of the people who watch this channel, to the...
I guess, like, it would help, like, knowing... Oh. Cope.
...impotent rage of some. And while it's certainly interesting...
Anyway, like, the point is, like, knowing how big the creatures were can kind of help you see how big the environment was, which is interesting to see how things have changed. You know, like, we got redwood trees. Redwood trees are pretty big. Was there a time when other trees were that size as well? Like, I don't know. If I find it interesting, and you can learn a lot about, well, like everything really, by knowing how big the things are that exist there. I feel like that's, you know, like, did the trees have high, like, tall branches, like big trunks, and the branches were like not really available from, you know, the ground level? Like, when did the branches start? I don't know. Like, I think that kind of thing is interesting to know. It's like you can find out so much about the environment based on how big things are.
Interesting and cool to know how big dinosaurs were. There's got to be a practical use for this knowledge, or self-respecting, degree-holding paleontologists.
I mean,
like
it could just be, it's just interesting.
Dempsey wouldn't spend thousands of hours inventing new methodologies to achieve greater accuracy. In his own words, specifically regarding volumetric models of dinosaurs, modular volumetric models also facilitate the modeling and simulation of dinosaur locomotion,
okay, yeah, how they walk,
actions, physical behavior when submerged in water, and other biological actions.
I guess, do they drown?
Size is an incredibly important part of an animal's biology, megatheropod fanboy contests aside, and determines the overall structure of its anatomy. A 1 kilogram bird of prey is going to have a totally different ecological role and body plan than a 10,000 kilogram megatheropod, for example, which in turn will look entirely different from a 50-ton sauropod that eats plants. Dempsey et al.'s groundbreaking paper does an incredible job of not only summarizing the various methods we've used to estimate dinosaur size in the past, but also goes past it, taking the best qualities of previous methods and combining them. It's based on creating rigorous 3D models of the skeleton and then predicting soft tissue using isometric and allometric equations sourcing living relatives.
So were we not doing that before? Were we not, like, also guessing how... I guess for a long time we weren't looking at too much, at least not too much soft tissue, because like, we've only just recently started positing, I guess, that some of these guys had big reserves of fat, you know, and they weren't just, like, stretched thin and dehydrated like they looked in Jurassic Park. Like, we were treating dinosaurs more like, you know, alligators or whatever, or I don't know, other reptiles where the skin is, like, really close to their bones, as opposed to giving them some muscle, or, like, more muscle, more fat, more things like that. So were we just not at all accounting for that before? Or just less?
There's a bird version and a non-avian sauropsid version for both isometric and allometric equations. If you're interested in a video diving into all the other methods paleontology has come up with over the past 200 years, check out the Paleontology Size Guide. You can pause this video and leave it open if you'd like. I'll still be here. I'm way too excited about this paper to leave.
Fair. I'm strapped in. I'm ready to go. The elephant is back.
Here's a quick refresher. Stylopodial equations like humerus and femur circumference allometry predict mass based on the circumference of weight-bearing limb bones.
Okay.
They end up underpredicting theropods and overpredicting ornithischians. Okay. Volumetrics work around this.
So they think that theropods are going to be, they said, smaller based on density and size, and then the horn of whatevers are, they always think they're bigger based on density and size. Okay.
The volume displaced by a particular model, multiplying that by density, and arriving at mass. This is much more detailed and holistic, as opposed to the broad brushstrokes of stylopodial estimation, but can also be subjective in terms of how much soft tissue you put on the bones.
Right, because that changes
things. Removes a significant portion of that subjectivity by using data from living relatives of dinosaurs to calculate the most likely amounts of soft tissue we should be putting on each body segment. Combining biomechanics, anatomy, and phylogenetic bracketing into a frankly brilliant methodology that should get Matt Dempsey an Oscar.
An Oscar? But okay, so by looking at what the creatures look like now and like what they, how their bone to soft tissue ratio is and like what they look like, they're working backwards to figure out what that might look like on closest known relatives. All right. I'm sorry if I have to like pause and like repeat stuff a lot. I'm interested in this so much, but scientific phraseology makes my head hurt. So I have to like pause and rephrase it in my own head to a point where it actually makes sense to me, and so I apologize if that's annoying.
Dempsey's team used a technique refined in previous studies known as convex hull modeling, where you take a 3D model of a skeleton and mathematically wrap the minimum soft tissue possible around the bones.
Right.
2021 and
convex
2023 studies improved this method, which is an automatic underestimate, by using CT scans of living birds and non-avian reptiles to predict the amount of soft tissue dinosaurs would have. The models required relatively complete skeletons to be worth analyzing, and bone positions were based on articulated fossils as well as related taxa. Levels of soft tissue added to the skeletal were based on birds and living non-avian reptiles, with each group also having a direct proportional or isometric equation, and an allometric equation, or one where proportions change with body mass.
I almost paused to ask, what is allometric? And then he told me. Thank you for not pausing right away, and then I paused immediately and I just talk about it.
Dempsey's team created preferred models that took into account evolutionary relationships and body composition for each taxon, so keep that in mind when we discuss new body mass estimates. The team also found that center of mass changes according to the clade studied and body size, with the center of mass moving closer and closer to the hip as the animal becomes larger. Makes sense. You'd need a high degree of stability when you weigh as much as multiple elephants. Proportions were also affected, especially in theropods. While torsos proportionally remained similar, theropod arms were found to be much smaller proportionally in the biggest species. That doesn't really come as a surprise, but it's nice to have more data on the subject.
Somebody was telling me about this in the comments. They were so helpful to explain this to me. Craig 2196 explained to me why the small arms were a thing, and he says that it has to do with the changing of where the muscles were going. So because the bite force was getting like super intense on these big theropods, like the bicep muscles were kind of going up into the jaw, going rah, rah. So now the arms are a little bit smaller because they don't need to be as big because they're using neck and jaw muscles instead of arm muscles. They're not using their arms as much, so they can get smaller. And I TRex arms all the time. I like walk around like this, like constantly. But anyway, that was Craig. Craig was very helpful. So many people were so helpful on my last video. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to everybody who watched last video. Everyone who like talked to Craig was very helpful. There was a couple of other people who told me a lot of other cool things. Edmonto talked about why people can't, why America has an easier time of finding these fossils. Edmonto is the name of Edmontosaurus is apparently a thing. Anyway, cool. I'm also rediscovering some other things in the comments because I started reading through a lot of longer comments, and I did, some of them are newer. Some of them I just found today. But anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love it when people write me like essays in the comments explaining things, because it's like, I asked a question for a reason. I want to know the answer. Anyway, back to the current video.
The size of the tail also varies wildly between taxa. It's only 9% of Archaeopteryx's body mass, but nearly a third of Acrocanthosaurus's.
Wow.
Necks went wild in the paper. Dempsey's team is quick to point out that the non-avian sauropsid values for sauropods are objectively too high, since it results in a center of mass further anterior of the shoulders that would cause the animal to immediately fall on its face.
Yeah, like
but
tip
even
over.
the bird-based isometric soft tissue outlines are greater than how we've traditionally reconstructed sauropods. The allometric model seems to be less useful overall, given the wider margin of error and how it predicts soft tissue volumes for sauropods that would result in essentially being mummified. Now, I promised you that the paper changed.
Okay, that's what I was thinking about earlier. Like, we used to, a lot of the dinosaurs that we see in like the Jurassic Park movies or whatever, basically are, the skin is just too close. They don't have any room for muscle or cardiovascular systems or anything.
Understanding of dinosaurian mass estimates. That's chiefly based on how traditional reconstructions appear to have underestimated the soft tissue that would have been present in life. As the paper itself states, many instances of previous models being lighter than or close to the lower end of our estimates are likely due to their reconstructed soft tissue outlines adhering very tightly to skeletal landmarks, particularly around the torso, hips, and neck. In many extant sauropsids, these regions support thick layers of muscle, fat, and integument, which are at least partly accounted for in our models by the Macaulay et al. 2023.
Oh, that's so cool. They're like, no, the density of the bones actually probably, like, it could have supported a lot bigger, a lot more stuff. That's cool!
In other words, in our effort to remain conservative, we've gone a little too far. Certain clades are more underestimated than others in particular. One example, based on conversations with Dr. Eric Snively, is how we typically reconstruct Tyrannosaurus without as much muscle as it would have had in the neck region.
What was that show that came out recently? There was a documentary series or whatever, and it had like the chonky dinosaurs. Everyone was talking about it, and I didn't watch it, but like, what was that?
The apparent disparity between stylopodial allometry, or the circumference of limb bones relative to body mass, and volumetrics, varies between clades, especially in megatheropods. Tyrannosaurus, for example, has proportionally thick leg bones, and so allometry doesn't brutally underestimate it as badly as it does Carcharodontosaurus.
Okay.
Dr. Dempsey raises this point in regards to Acrocanthosaurus, which his rigorous models calculate as weighing several tons heavier than stylopodial allometry would predict.
Wow.
He postulates that it's due to posture.
Oh.
Acrocanthosaurus was clearly much more massive than we thought when we put realistic amounts of soft tissue on it.
Oh, those legs, though.
But it needed to carry all it would predict. He postulates that it's due to posture. Acrocanthosaurus was clearly much more
look at those skinny little legs. That's pretty crazy. Look at those little legs.
Massive than we thought when we put realistic amounts of soft tissue on it, but it needed to carry all that weight somehow if its femur was thinner than a comparably sized tyrannosaur. It would have stood with a more erect posture, holding its legs closer to a columnar position in order to ease the stress on its weight-bearing femur, while tyrannosaurs could afford to bend their stronger legs more. Dempsey notes that this hasn't been biomechanically tested, but that the posture likely would have reduced the bending load across the femoral shaft.
Interesting.
Man, this is so cool. I love paleontology. I know you're foaming at the mouth for new mass estimates, so here we go.
Okay, so it was just a little bit more up. It would have had to stand straight, like more upright, as opposed to like that. This, I think, is what he's saying.
When I spoke with Dempsey about which mass estimation workflow he considered more realistic, he said the preferred isometric, so we'll go with those. They combine the most anatomically realistic portions of both bird and non-avian reptile scaling. I won't go over all 52 taxa highlighted, since you can just go read the paper's supplementary information for that, but here are a few of the more popular dinosaurs with the new masses compared to mammal-based 21% adjusted convex hull estimates from the paper. Dilophosaurus. This iconic, not frilled, not venomous theropod went from 388 kilograms with this particular specimen to 494 kilograms, a 27% increase. Suchomimus. I tragically left this animal off of the most recent megatheropod list, which was definitely a mistake.
Look at his little fingernails! Oh my god, I've seen fingernails like that. Yikes.
Convex hull models predicted 3,866 kilograms for this specimen, while a corrected soft tissue version indicates 5,260 kilograms.
Like a file? very useful for getting those tail like twirlies down.
Synraptor. Synraptor is way bigger than I thought, at 1717 kilograms, the outdated method,
Wow.
and 2676 kilograms using corrected soft tissue isometry.
Wow!
Really awesome. Good job, Metriacanthosaurid fans. Your patience paid off. We can't leave out Allosaurus jamatsoni. Big Al2 was estimated at 813 kilograms by Convex Hull, and is now thought to be 1,282 kilograms.
Underestimated 57%.
Acrocanthosaurus is the star of the show here. This specimen was laser scanned and estimated in 2009 to weigh an average of 6,297 kilograms, with Convex Hull predicting 5,794 kilograms.
Wow.
But is up to 7,493 kilograms for the sailbacked model, as typically reconstructed.
Okay, because it's more.
8,364 for the humpback model, once you factor in realistic soft tissue. That's enormous.
That's so big!
2 tons to one of my favorite theropods is wild. Dempsey emphasized the importance of scanning 3D skeletons to estimate mass properties, so we may have been reconstructing Acrocanthosaurus in particular as too light, with too shallow of a torso and too small of a tail. He does go out of his way to let us know he's not knocking on 2D skeletal artists, who work incredibly hard with the information they're given. But we need to remember that using paper measurements and scale bars alone inevitably propagates error simply due to the limitations of the medium. Looking at bones in 3D lets you check reference points and correct for perspective,
and circumferences
as well as
and stuff.
Things that may not have been described in published detail. Gorgosaurus also got a terrifying bulk up, with a digital sculpt created specifically for this new study. Up from 2,969 kilograms to 3,886 kilograms.
Just like the amount that it's all like over 1,000 kilograms so many times, and that's so big. That's so crazy.
Nothing to sneeze at, getting a third heavier. An iconic Tyrannosaurus rex specimen, AMNH 5027.
Okay, this one's not 1,000.
This is one of the smallest potentially adult rexes, although its adulthood isn't verified by histology. Convex Hull calculates 5,600.
So a teenager, young adult,
with the
small
new method, it's 7,926 kilograms. A 3D model not affiliated with the paper got 7,219 kilograms, which would mean a fairly small mass increase of 9.8%.
Alright, closer
it's
on
crazy
this one.
that the biggest acro specimen is now the same size as a plausibly adult, if admittedly small, T-Rex.
Wow.
Apatosaurus was previously estimated at 26 tons.
Wow.
To 40.4 tons, showing the insane degree to which we've been shrink-wrapping these animals.
That's
horrifying implications for the Oklahoma giant.
Twice as big? Oh my god, you getting squashed, and they're not even gonna notice.
Giant. Diplodocus also went up from 11.5 to 17.2 tons. Barosaurus jumped from 15.8 to 26 tons at 28 meters. Is it just me, or do the new soft tissue estimates benefit sauropods way more than other dinosaurs?
A little bit. But now I'm kind of thinking about that video I watched not too long ago, trying to see like would the T-Rex foot actually shake the water. And now that everything is bigger, all of their weight measurements are off. So now I think definitely yes. I feel like one of these guys moves. I mean, you might get knocked off your feet. That's so much weight.
Camarasaurus continues that trend, 13.4 to 18.8 tons.
Holy shit.
Ooh, what about Giraffatitan? Convex Hull had it at 25 tons originally, and it's up to 34 tons. It just added 2 elephants to its body mass.
That's so
Repetosaurus is
nuts.
an interesting one for those of you interested in reconstructing Fangorn, the giant Calomedu associated with the Brachiosaurus Malaya material.
All of that
adult was
meant
projected
nothing
to weigh
to me.
10.4 tons and is now expected to have been 14.7 tons when fully grown. Batagatitan is the biggest animal in the new study. Even Convex Hull had this specimen at 46 metric tons, a monster by any reasonable standard. But with realistic soft tissue, it would weigh 67.7 tons.
How big is this human guy at the bottom here? Is he supposed to be like 6 feet tall? Like, is that supposed to? Because he still comes up to this dude's like, I feel like he's got to be smaller than 6 feet tall, this guy. This, like, so even he comes up partway up his leg. I feel like we need to get something that's like they come up to their ankles or something.
Of course, this comes out right after I release a Megasauropod video, making it immediately outdated. However, the Batagatitan mass here is likely too high, since it's based on scanning the mount. The mount's gaps were scaled to material larger than Argentinosaurus, which doesn't seem to be the case for the actual preserved material. Just a few more highlight taxa, I promise. This Stegosaurus specimen is nowhere near the maximum size of the genus, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
Even so, going from 1292 to 1676
Still
kilograms
pretty big,
isn't bad at all, and will be useful.
We've gone way back down again. It's like, oh, I can look this one in the eye.
For scaling bigger specimens. Gastonia is near and dear to my heart, since I got to work on excavating it while I worked at the BYU Museum. This specimen is a small one and went from 417 kilograms to 490. Not much of an increase. Edmontosaurus was 3.1 tons and is now 4.6 tons.
Land Before Time. Spike was that first one.
Finally, a mid-sized specimen of Triceratops went from 4.8 to 6.5 tons.
Still
Obviously, there were quite a few large dinosaur specimens that weren't included in the paper. 52 is a lot of work, after all. Argentinosaurus isn't complete enough to apply this technique to, but given the upsize its relatives received, was over 90 tons or even higher, likely over 100.
Wow.
Really didn't change all that much, so recent GDIs of specimens like Sue and Scotty would be adjusted up 9.8% to yield 11.2 and 11.5 tons respectively. Although 3D scan data does indicate that Sue was likely larger due to underreporting of measurements. It's important to remember that individual proportions are critical in this technique, so cross-scaling between individuals is going to be iffy at best.
Okay, and that's fair. We can get, like, we don't know if all of these are the average size of these creatures either, I suppose. We know more about some of them than others, but maybe the ones that we have found are outliers in some kind of way because they had denser bones or like just where they happened to be. They are older. Like there could be reasons for why we have the bones that we currently have. And maybe they're just maybe they were like a monster at the time, you know, they were an outlier. If at the end of like human civilization and aliens come back down at some point and like the human skeletons that they have available to them are like Richard III, Andre the Giant, and Michael Phelps, they might come to the conclusion that humans were very different. And Shaq might be in there too. You know, there's a couple of big ones, like a one that's all twisted and weird. Tutankhamun may be in there because like there's a couple of weird ones that are kind of twisted and strange looking, and then you've got like, I don't know, like those are the bones that survived for some reason, you know. And I don't know, they might also get some interesting ideas about humans in general. So I don't know. I'm speaking out of my ass right now, but it's a thought that I have.
Less between taxa. The bigger Rex specimens are much more proportionally robust than AMNH 5027 and so would likely be heavier than calculated here. What does this mean for everybody's favorite big fragmentary specimens? You're welcome to go nuts trying to apply this math to Cope and Goliath in the comments or on Discord. Obviously, individual variation will mess with any results you might get, but hey. Scaling this paper's AMNH 5027 up to 12.9 meters gets right around 12 tons, which is a realistic estimate for Goliath, although admittedly on the very low end. For now anyway, adding 9.8% to our current GDI and 3D model estimates for T-Rex might be the best way to go, until this technique is applied directly to larger specimens and their proportions are taken into account. This would up Cope's predicted mass to well over 12 tons, with Goliath plausibly exceeding 13. I'll toss a quick update for T-Rex masses up on the screen, so feel free to pause and read, with the understanding that any of these would be subject to change according to...
I'm pausing and reading. And I'll let you do that. You can pause me and read it as well. I'm going to step out of the way, because I just want to see what's going on here. Okay. Lots of, like 9 to 14K. Like, that's the range. Okay.
Individual variation. I also wonder what impact this Acrocanthosaurus will have on big Carcharodontosaurs. A huge reason why its mass is so much higher here is because great care was taken to account for the sail, and models were made for both a sail-backed version and a hump-backed version. Fran, the specimen used, also includes material that hasn't been described. That obviously wouldn't carry over to taxa like Meraxes or Giganotosaurus, which didn't share that sail-back structure, but I'm excited to see what else comes from this new technique. 3D models also tend to underestimate soft tissue, according to the paper, so that's a fun thought.
So it's even bigger!
Giga holotype could potentially be back on the menu. Large dromaeosaurs may or may not be bigger, considering how Velociraptor's mass based on GTI is almost identical to this soft tissue method. Medium tyrannosaurs like Tarbosaurus, Daspletosaurus, and Zhusheng tyrannus should be 10 to 30% heavier, as morphological intermediates between Gorgosaurus and Tyrannosaurus. That makes me wonder about the Zhusheng giant vertebra, as well as megatheropods with bizarre proportions like Dinosaurs. Something else to think about is how this may affect biomechanics. More muscle
Yeah, how
and
are
other
they gonna
soft
walk?
tissue would have varying effects on speed, with greater locomotor muscles in the hind limbs increasing theropod running speed, for example.
No
All
thanks.
that extra weight, on the other hand, may slow these animals down somewhat. Bite force is also a potential dependent variable.
I don't know, like, you got things like hippos, which are pretty big guys, but they can move pretty quick. You know? Don't hippos, can't they run at like 30 something miles an hour or something crazy? Like, they're pretty big. Sometimes it just gives them extra push, you know?
An eye on. Were their theropods as jowly as modern tegus? Were some more slimly built but still powerful, like crocodile monitors? Again, each taxon should be taken on a case-by-case basis when it comes to this method, and ideally we'll look at individual skeletons. It isn't something where you can take, for example, the 9.8% ratio increase from Tyrannosaurus and apply it to all theropods.
Oh yeah, no, of course not.
Remember
of course
that.
not.
I know this is a shorter video, but I read the paper as soon as it came out and couldn't wait to make this. The Orcas in Subnautica Below Zero script is almost done, and I'm working on the art while I release shorter projects in the meantime, so you'll still get it, don't worry. I also have a question for the masses. Would anyone be upset if I moved the release date of Obsidian Dawn up a couple months? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this paper, especially what issues you may have picked up on that should be refined in future studies. Read it for yourself using the link in the pinned comment. I'm Vividen, and I'll see you next time.
Vividen. Goodbye, Vividen. That was interesting. Once again. Very interesting. Anyway. Last time I did a video from them, I showed up on their like recommended page, which I always forget that that's a possibility when I react to that anybody on YouTube. Always forget that they might see it. It's happened a few times, and I'm always like, oh god, what did I say? Luckily, there's things that if I don't like a video, I usually just I've had videos before where I like watched it and really just didn't like the video, and then it just doesn't, I don't post it. Like if I don't like it, I'm like, all right, well, that was a waste of my time, but I'm not posting it. So, anyway, that's wild. That was interesting though. I love this stuff. And again, like I said last time, everyone in the comments was really helpful. Got so much information, so many people answering my questions, so many suggestions for things to look at next. So I'm great. Y'all have given me so much to think about and so much to work with. So thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly did, and I cannot wait to keep diving in. See you in the next one.